What's up, mi gente? Good to see all of you. Thank you so much for having me. I see lots of familiar faces and excited to be in community with all of you. So thank you. All right, I'm going to share my screens. Oh my gosh, I feel all the love already. Oh, okay, I'm going to share my screen. Okay, and then when I do that, I lose a couple of things. So, okay, I see a thumbs up. Perfect. Fantastic. Thank you. All right. I am Honey, and I am from the North Carolina Community Health Worker Association. So, for the CHWs in the room, we are your professional association. And I have the pleasure and the privilege of working with several community health workers already here in this room, in this space with us. Thank you so much for your leadership and all you continually do to serve our communities across North Carolina. CHWs are being in space in community with community health workers is one of my favorite things because if you are a CHW, you know that the vibe with other CHWs is 100%, right? There is no other place than more exciting than when you're with CHWs. So I very much appreciate the partnership of our CHWs, especially all the ones at Latin 19. Y'all are amazing. So thank you. All right, so next slide. For those of you who may be new to who community health workers are, if we take a look at the definition from the American Public Health Association, the American Public Health Association defines community health workers as frontline public health workers who are very close or have very trusted understanding and relationships with communities that we serve. Right, and this definition was created by CHWs ourselves, and we in North Carolina. I'm very proud of the initiative that we have led and where we currently are. So I want to talk a little bit about the journey, provide us with some context, lay out where we've been, where we are, and where we're going. So here's our story, a little bit of context. And some of you have heard this before, some of you have not. The initiative for North Carolina specifically, we know that CHWs or Promotores de Salud, we have been doing work in community for decades, years and years and years. My mom was the first community health worker I've ever known. But for us specifically in North Carolina, the initiative started in 2014. And at that time, there was a CHW coordinator inside of DHHS who was going around to different communities across the state to find out what we needed, what CHWs needed in terms of training, certification, and a formal network. That was 2014. So that happened between like 2014 and 2017. Right, so all of that information that was collected was analyzed, and what we have today is the 2018 recommendations report. That was the first time ever in North Carolina where we had a recommendations report that was fueled by the voices of community health workers. So that was 2018, and a lot has changed since that time. In 2019, the state pulled together the North Carolina Community Health Worker Advisory Committee. I'm looking at this, it looks like an egg, but that was in 2019. And I was very privileged. One of the CHW coordinator at that time at the state called me and asked me if I would like to chair the committee. So I very reluctantly agreed. I was very scared. I had no clue what I was doing. And this was a group of CHWs from across the state, from different backgrounds, doing different things, some within the systems, some from communities, some from CBOs, from our community-based organizations. So we all came together to form the North Carolina Community Health Worker Advisory Committee. We were very excited to move this work forward. And then I think that was like in September, August or September of 2019, because then guess what happens in 2020, right? We all know the pandemic hit us in 2020 and it hit us hard. And that was right around the time that our standardized core competency training, we know that as SCCT, you will hear me refer to our standardized core competency training as SCCT. SCCT was piloted in 6 community colleges across the state. And that was very early in 2020 when the world shut down. We had to swiftly transition that from an in-person training to a virtual training. And then, of course, we know that in 2020, CHWs were spotlighted as the workforce to reach our vulnerable and under-resourced communities. And then, of course, in 2021, because what happened was we, the Community Health Worker Advisory Committee, we were getting a lot of calls from community health workers about, hey, what are we doing? Where are we going? How do we mobilize? So in 2021, this committee pushed forward with forming the North Carolina CHW Association. So essentially, this body became this body over here. All right. So we formalized in 2021. I became the first employee of the association, and the rest of some of the committee members became board members of the association. And it's really important that I tell this story because, as we know, so much of our story, what's happening today is shaped by our history, is shaped by our context. And it's important that we review that so that we all understand our history of where we've been, to understand where we currently are, to know where we're going. All right. So our training encompasses these core competencies right here that you see on the screen. These core competencies are nationally recognized core competencies. Okay. There are several CHW leaders who came together to form these core competencies that have been infused into our training. So in our training, which I'm really proud to say now, that is offered in 14 community colleges across the state. 2 of those colleges, Durham Tech and AB Tech, offer the curriculum in Spanish. All right, these are 2 Promotores de Salud, CHW leaders who are bilingual, who deliver the training in Spanish, because we understand that there are a ton of CHWs who are monolingual or bilingual, and we want to remove barriers. We want to remove barriers so that our Promotores de Salud, our CHW leaders, can access these trainings in a way that is equitable. Okay, so very proud of the fact that we have 2 colleges that are teaching the curriculum in Spanish. And then also, as we think about pathways for certification, because once CHWs finish the course, they can then apply for certification. We have 2 pathways, as you see here on this slide. We have SCCT, and we also have our legacy track. So 2 different pathways for certification. When we think about what that looks like, what the criteria is, we see here that for CHWs, we need CHWs it's a 96-hour curriculum, and CHWs need to complete the curriculum at 80% or higher. That means they have to have a passing grade of 80% or higher. And for our legacy track, that means that we need our CHWs to have 2,000 hours of experience, a knowledge of at least one population group, and verified experiences. Now, lots of questions. We get lots of questions around these criteria. 2,000 hours of experience, that can be paid or unpaid, because we know there are a ton of CHWs who do work for free or do work on a volunteer basis. We don't get paid for this work, right? So we understand that. So in order for us to recognize that we've built the structure in order to support CHWs who are doing this work for free or on a volunteer basis. So 2,000 hours of experience, knowledge of at least one population group. Okay, so I will use myself as an example here. I'm a Hmong American woman. I know what my community needs, right? I speak the language. I know our values. I know our traditions. That's at least knowledge of at least one population group. In my career, I've also spent time working with HIV/AIDS, excuse me, the HIV/AIDS population. That's knowledge of at least two population groups, right? So we need at least knowledge of one population group and verified references. And these references can come from a community member or a community partner, somebody who can vouch for that CHW, that promotora de salud, so that we know that this person is for real legit, right? That they know their stuff. The way this works is, and both of these, both SCCT and Legacy Track, equal certification at a level 1. Okay, it's very important that we talk about this. So SCCT and Legacy Track both give us certification at a level 1. The Legacy Track applications come to our credentialing council. Our credentialing council includes 6 CHWs and 2 system allies. Shout out to Jose Infanzon from UNATE. I see him here on the call. He is our CHW ambassador for Region 1 in the West and serves on our credentialing council. And let me just tell you, the credentialing council, they are tough. Okay, they are tough. They review these applications with love and a certain amount of rigor, because we want to make sure, part of this is we want to make sure that our CHWs, and if you have spent time with me, you've heard me say this, is that in order for us to move this initiative forward, we as CHWs, we as community members, we have to speak the language of the system and teach the system to speak the language of the community, okay? And in order for us to do this, certification for us is a way to speak the language of the system so that the system can understand what happens, what really happens in community. And the reason why Credentialing Council really takes this process seriously is because we want to bulletproof our CHWs against the system. We do not want systems questioning CHWs on their skill, on their competency, whether they have the training or not to be able to do the work inside of the system. We want to bulletproof our workforce. So this is why we've built these structures, and we've heard from CHWs who have said, this is really hard. There's a lot of questions. Why have you made this so hard? There's a reason why we've made this hard, but our commitment to the CHWs is yes, this is hard, and you have support. So if you need support as a CHW to complete these applications, the team at the association, we stand ready to support you because we want you to be successful, okay? So moving forward, I also want to talk a little bit about advanced levels of certification. So advanced levels of certification, what you see here on the screen is an adapted model of the socio-ecological model. It is a public health model, okay? For many people, many employers, they only see CHWs as boots on the ground level workers. How many of you have heard that? Right? How many of you have heard as CHWs, they are boots on the ground level workers? We are only good, to be working on the ground with community members. Yes, we are. And I want to challenge that because as community health workers, we also have a lot of skill and a lot of competency to be able to move through the system to impact policy changes. In order for us to do that, and we know that we have CHWs working at all levels of the socio-ecological model. And in order for us to claim that, we had to build the structure to capture that, to demonstrate to the system that we have CHWs that truly are working at all levels of the socio-ecological model. Again, this is our way of speaking the language of the system to speak the language of the community, okay? So this was years in the making. Our advanced levels, it's something that I am very proud of. Proud to say that the process we used to develop advanced levels of certification was over 70% led by CHWs. So this process was over 70, I think it was like 71 or 72% CHW voice who led this process. So what we see here, we have 4 levels of certification, okay? At the first level, we have the individual and interpersonal level, right? This is the first level. And this is what a lot of people consider that boots on the ground level work, right? We've got CHWs working with their community members one-on-one. That's what a lot of people see. As when we say community health workers working one-on-one with our community members to provide support, to connect to resources, to provide them with advocacy, right? So we see that. But then on top of that, we have a level 2, right? So the level 2 at the community level, not only are we now doing work at the individual and interpersonal level, but we also have CHWs doing work at the community level where they're not just taking care of 1 or 2 people, but now we're taking care of an entire community, right? We are providing education and we're providing resource coordination and we're providing support to an entire community up to an organizational level where now we have CHWs. And, from the organizational level, I see these as our CHW managers, our CHW leaders inside of organizations who are leading and supervising teams of CHWs who are now also advocating up to the organizational level about things and structures and support that CHWs need to be able to do that work well so that we can lift them up and rise them up. Right? So that's at a level 3, all the way up to a level 4, where now we have CHWs doing work at the public policy level. Because you better believe, yes, we absolutely have CHWs who are doing work at the public policy level. So my friends, what you see here is we are not just boots on the ground level worker. We can impact an entire system because we have CHW champions and leaders doing work at all levels of the socio-ecological model. Yes? Yes. Okay. And then, of course, a shout out to our partners who continue to support this work, who have provided unwavering support in so many ways. We could not do this work without all of their support. You see them listed here on the screen. These partners have either provided direct funding or have supported the association contractually to make sure that we're able to move this process forward. Okay, so I'm going to get to where we currently are, but before I do that, a big shout out and a big thank you. This is my information here on the screen. Please reach out. Let me know how we can support you. I welcome your partnership in this space. And then also, shameless plug, if you have not joined our listserv to get the most current information, I welcome you into this space to do that, especially if you are a CHW, especially if you are a promotora de salud. We want to make sure that our CHWs, our promotoras, get the most current, updated information. I promise we're not going to send you a bunch of junk mail. I'm not about that life. I know you're not about that life, but I want to make sure that as CHWs, you get the most current, up-to-date information, because if you're well equipped, then that means your community is well equipped. And I want to make sure that you get that information. So join us on our listserv